It's the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, broadcasting live from downtown Nashville. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome back. We are joined on a Newsmaker line right now by one of the greatest reporters in the country, my former boss at Breitbart News, the Washington bureau editor for Breitbart. He's been working in journalism for, I don't know, a decade and a half, 2 decades. The great Matt Boyle. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, Mike, how's it going, sir?
Wow. I mean, you have been on fire. The latest story, you're plugged into what's going on in Washington, D.C. So Donald Trump nominates Pete Hegseth to be Secretary of Defense. Combat veteran, major, Princeton grad, Harvard graduate school graduate, and really would be that kind of junior officer coming up who could destroy DEI and wokeness in the military. Now, there are all of these anonymous sources smearing him. NBC New Yorker claiming he was a drinker. There's no evidence. Anonymous sources. Now there's a little planted story in the Wall Street Journal. Oh, Trump is thinking of DeSantis as a replacement. Hegseth just about an hour ago said, look, I talked to the president. He's fully behind me. What is going on here, Matt Boyle?
Look, this is because, first off, take with the biggest giant grain of salt that exists everything that you see in the establishment media. They are on a jihadi-level smear campaign against Pete Hegseth. And the reason why is because of what you just laid out with his background. And beyond that as well, he said, and he has made clear, he is a, quote, reformed neocon. In other words, he's a former neocon, right? Like, he is no longer a neocon. And the deep state, warmonger elite there's so much at stake when it comes to the Pentagon. Pete Hegseth would really reform the place. So what's happening is these deep state actors are using their allies in the establishment media in the aftermath of President Trump's landslide victory to try to nullify the election, right? Like, what they want to do is they want to just get back to business as usual over at the Pentagon, where they cash multi-million-dollar checks, multi-billion-dollar checks, really, and just go back to, having their old parties, right? Like, and the swamp operating like the swamp. There is an ongoing effort to try to undermine him with Republican senators. But I can tell you that from my conversations with Republican senators, now look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Hegseth is a lock for confirmation. This is going to be a battle, and it is a major fight, okay? But that being said, I don't think these attacks are landing as much as the media is trying to make them. Right. So I can tell you, I'm about to break a story. It's not even up on Breitbart yet, but I just spoke to the office of this morning, Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina. This is one of the senators you would think would be on the fence about a controversial nominee. No. Senator Tillis's office confirmed to me that if Pete Hegseth is reported favorably out of the Senate Armed Services Committee, he will vote for him on the floor of the U.S. Senate. So this is not what the establishment media thinks it is. He's meeting today with Senator Joni Ernst, right? Like, so what the media is doing, and the political establishment and the elites and the deep state and the globalists, they're trying to take out Hegseth, and they're trying to create blood in the water here, because what they're trying to do is it's not about Pete. It's not about Hegseth. It's not about previously it wasn't about Matt Gaetz, right? Like at the attorney general position. What this is about is trying to nullify Donald Trump's election. Because what they're going to do if they get Hegseth, you think they're done there? No way. They're going straight after Tulsi, RFK, Kash Patel, etc. I can also break some big news here, which is that Senator Tillis' office told me that the senator supports Kash Patel and Pam Bondi for Attorney General and FBI Director, and he's on the committee of jurisdiction in that case, right? Like, so again, the fact here is that I'm not seeing the evidence based off my conversations with Republican senators that they are buying into this smear campaign that we're seeing against Hegseth that the media is buying into, right? The media is trying to create this. And why are they
That's
doing
the key point. Because if you look at it journalistically, right, you know this, Matt, how many times would you do a story based on of this level? Yeah, he's alleging he drinks too much from anonymous sources. You don't go with anonymous sources on a story like that. You got to get somebody on the record. There's virtually nothing on the record against Pete Hegseth.
Everybody that we hear on the record, and this goes from senators to people that know him, et cetera, they're all backing him up, right? Like, so if I were Hegseth and Donald Trump, I would keep fighting, right?
Yes.
Like, I would go through, I want a confirmation hearing, and I want to vote in the committee, and then I want to vote on the floor, because I dare any Republican senator to vote again. Now, we know what the Democrats are going to do, right? Like, of course they're going to be.
Is every Democrat going to vote against them, do you think, Matt?
I would think so,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I don't know. Who knows? By the way, I'm not telling you that I'm saying that that's 100% the case. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? It's possible. You never know. Especially in the national security space, people tend to be deferential to the president, right? Like, so maybe if he gets through that whole process of the committee and whatnot, you might see some Democrats vote for him. I don't know. But that being said, so I'm not ruling it out. But I would say I dare any Republican senator to vote against President Trump's nominees. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I dare them to do it. And so what they're trying to do is these globalist deep state people are trying to end it before we get to that point, because they know that senators can't vote no on the floor, right? Because if they do, and there's an actual vote out in public, then we're going to smoke out the rhinos, right? Like, and we're going to know who they are, and we're going to be able to hold them all accountable. Because this party is changing, and that's a big part of the reason why you're seeing this tumult here, right? Like, it didn't end on Election Day. Election Day was the first pitch thrown in the baseball game. Okay, the bigger fight here is that the Republican Party is changing. It's ditching the globalist war party ways of the past, right? Obviously, you saw Liz Cheney campaigning with Kamala Harris, right, over the course of this campaign. So as these changes happen, people, they're going through their process, right? Like, and it's a sometimes tumultuous process. But that being said, I think you got to be shoulder to the wheel here and not buy into this establishment media effort to try to derail President Trump's picks and agenda.
Who do you think planted the story with the Wall Street Journal that Trump was thinking of having Hegseth withdraw and replace him with Ron DeSantis?
I don't know, but I would imagine that that's probably some very establishment Republican types, right? Like the neocon types that we're talking about here, right? Like, so, because look, frankly, I get it that DeSantis is really popular in some respects, and he'd probably be good on things like DEI, but like when it comes to the war stuff, we saw his mistakes on Ukraine and Russia during the campaign. Remember the Tucker Carlson's questions at the beginning of the primary. Remember, there's people around DeSantis, that are a lot of like never Trumpy types folks and whatnot. And there's concern that the Pentagon would, if he were there, would become a harbor for those folks.
Well, also,
I don't know.
Hegseth is a combat veteran with 2 Bronze Stars. And
sure.
And we
decorated career, by the way, more than 20 medals.
Exactly. So. DeSantis served in the military, and good for him for that. But he was a JAG officer. In other words, right. he was an attorney. That's different than being a combat leader. And I think Hegseth has a much better understanding and is a much better defense secretary candidate than DeSantis. Okay, so Joni Ernst, that meeting is going to come today. There's been some buzz there that she's not crazy about some of the claims about his personal life. What do you think is going to happen with that Joni Ernst meeting today?
Well, look, Senator Ernst is somebody, I know her pretty well. I've talked to her many times over the years. I hope that she goes into this meeting with an open mind and comes out of it, convinced that, because apparently they're meeting this afternoon around 3 o'clock is what I hear. I hope that she goes into it with an open mind and she comes out and announces her support for him, because, the idea that, again, this is bigger than just Pete Hegseth.
Bigger than Pete Hegseth. Matt Boyle, as always.
The entire Trump agenda on the line.
It is so much fun to talk with you. And we're so appreciative of you coming on our program. Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
You bet. Anytime.
All right. When we come back, our buddy Mike Bentz was on Joe Rogan's podcast yesterday for 3 hours. And Joe barely got a word in. It was a tour de force. We've got the clip from it. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy, back with the Mike Benz Joe Rogan podcast.
My fellow Americans, I have to tell you about my good friends at D.T. McCall & Sons. They have furniture and appliances and a lot more. They've been family-owned in Middle Tennessee for over 100 years, and they're not going to rip you off. No hidden charges, no delivery charges, no charges for all of the crazy things. These are sick people at the lumber yards. These are very sick people. They charge you for cords and hoses and haul off. They charge you for all of these things. They call them hidden charges. It's the type of surprise that you don't want to see. It's like an October surprise, but it's worse. D.T. McCall & Sons, they're not going to do that. They're great people. They're going to give you a great deal. With locations in Lebanon, Carthage, Lafayette, Cookeville, and Franklin, D.T. McCall & Sons will give you the deal of your life. Check them out today or go to dtmccalls.com.
Impersonator not endorsed by Donald Trump.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
We're going to get to the Mike Benz appearance on Joe Rogan in his 3-hour podcast yesterday in just a minute, but we have some breaking news. Are you ready? Here's a statement from President Donald J. Trump. It just broke about 3 minutes ago. So this is hot off the presses. I am pleased to announce that Peter Navarro, a man who was treated horribly by the deep state, whatever else you'd like to call it, will serve as my senior counselor for trade and manufacturing. During my first term, few were more effective or tenacious than Peter in enforcing my 2 sacred rules: buy American, hire American. He helped me renegotiate unfair trade deals like NAFTA and the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, and moved every one of my tariff and trade actions fast. Caps, all caps, fast. How Trumpian. The senior counselor position leverages Peter's broad range of White House experience while harnessing his extensive policy, analytic, and media skills. His mission will be to help successfully advance and communicate the Trump manufacturing, tariff, and trade agendas. Congratulations, Peter Navarro, friend of the program. We've had him on the show several times. Had him on right after he got out of that crooked 4-month contempt of Congress sentence. This is fantastic and great news. Okay, promised. Mike Benz, who's been a guest on our program many a time, one of the most brilliant guys in America, former State Department official under Donald Trump. He was on Joe Rogan yesterday, and 3 hours on Joe Rogan, and I don't think Joe Rogan got a word in edgewise. Rogan was exhausted by the end of it. But look, he lays out the deep state censorship complex. And we have some highlights here. Let's begin with Mike Benz on Joe Rogan yesterday.
Because now half of Ukraine is effectively militarily backstopped by Russia. So they have to get Europe to pass these sanctions on Russia. But the issue is a lot of these EU member states did not want to have to buy super expensive Western LNG. It would be ideal if you could simply harvest the endogenous gas supplies in Ukraine. Ukraine happens to sit on Europe's 3rd largest unexploited natural gas resources, or the shale that can be converted. And so Burisma was a tool to be able to supplement the Western LNG with an endogenous and at-home Ukrainian alternative gas supply, so that the sanctions could go through in Europe, and so that Ukraine would not be reliant on Russia to have cheap natural gas. But this required Naftogaz, the state-owned Ukrainian gas company, which George Soros has been locked in a power struggle with Putin over privatization for decades. And Burisma was the largest of the private for-profit firms that had the gas rights for exploitation of eastern Ukraine and the surrounding Crimea offshore gas supplies. And so Burisma was seen as an instrument of statecraft by the U.S. State Department to economically bankrupt Russia and to militarily shut down Russia's war machine as part of the larger play for Naftogaz and to build up Ukraine's innate gas supplies, which were underexploited, in part because of a military tension over who actually controls that territory. That's why the Donbass is so important. That's why after the counter coup, the U.S. was sponsoring this is what the military the military assistance impeachment of Trump was about in 2019. We weren't at war with Russia then, right? This was 2019. This is 3 years before the outbreak. We were sponsoring the military reconquest of that region because that's where the energy resources are. The population's mostly in the West. The resources are mostly in the East. It's the same thing with China and Xinjiang in terms of that dichotomy. And so this is, when Hunter Biden said, when he was asked what he was doing on Burisma and whether he felt shame about it, he said he was doing a patriotic duty for his country. Burisma was an instrument of statecraft for the State Department. What they were doing is they were building that up. That's why they had funding from U.S. aid. Again, the CIA funding conduit was working with the Atlantic Council with 7 CIA directors on its board. Hunter Biden's on the chairman's advisory board of the NDI. Hunter Biden's law firm even has, this just broke 4 months ago, Hunter Biden's law firm actually had wrote a pitch to the U.S. State Department for how Burisma could serve as as basically a vassal for U.S. State Department interests in the region. You had Burisma's back channeling with the U.S. ambassador in Rome on similar grounds in terms of the Italy-Greece supplies. But what you have here is a private sector for-profit company. Many such cases, by the way, because not only was Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma as chairman's advisory board of the CIA's DNC cutout, but who else was on the board of directors right next to Hunter Biden? Cofer Black. Cofer Black, who spent 30 years in the CIA, won CIA Distinguished Medals Awards. You can read the Daily Beast article where Cofer Black is described as Mitt Romney's Sherpa to the intelligence community to get the CIA's blessing to back him against Barack Obama.
Okay, so that's a lot. And look, Mike Benz, who was just speaking there to Joe Rogan, has an encyclopedic knowledge of what the CIA was doing. Now, let's put this in context. When did this happen? He was talking about the period of time shortly after January 1st, 2014, which is, of course, the date that Joe Biden put into Biden in the Hunter Biden pardon, right? Remember that? Yeah, all crimes either charged or not charged against the federal government from January 1st, 2014 until December 1st, 2024, 10 years, 11 months. I think it was March or April of 2014 when Hunter Biden went on the board of Burisma, the big, oil and gas exploration company in Ukraine. And Mike Pence is laying out the CIA involvement in this to Joe Rogan. Let's continue with that tour de force by Mike Pence.
What is this CIA luminary doing on the board of Burisma? What is Hunter Biden, who the CIA personally calls the Justice Department off investigating his funding sources and is on the chairman's advisory board of the CIA cutout? It's because, just like we have done since the 1940s, it is a dual-use entity. It's a for-profit standalone private sector firm, but it's also an instrument of statecraft because every dollar that Burisma generates is one less dollar that Gazprom generates, and so it's the best job in the world if you can get it. It's you get to keep all the profits, and you are getting the backing of the battering ram of the blob. And remember, we personally intervened. It was Joe Biden at the Council on Foreign Relations who bragged about using the diplomatic carrots and sticks of the U.S. empire, that if Ukraine wanted their $1 billion in assistance, they had to fire the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma. Nobody in our Congress, I think, is prepared if there was a total declassification of all CIA and State Department cables and documents and meeting minutes and emails and communications. If you had, for all intelligence work related to Burisma, the treasure map that would break open, I think, would frankly be a diplomatic scandal.
Okay, so we're going to pause here for a moment. a couple things there about what Mike Benz was talking about. You hear this theme also from Steve Bannon frequently. A couple things. We are emerging from the period of the American empire, right? And that's what all of these guys in the CIA, the establishment guys, the intelligence community, they've been developing this really since, I guess, maybe the end of World War II. But it's accelerated over the past couple of decades. And that's not a good way to go, because in the American empire, they have used our capabilities to pick the winners and losers of various, governments around the world. That is not the way to go. And in fact, what Bannon says is, this American empire thing needs to end. It needs to be America first. We need to protect America. We need to get out of the business of having protectorates, right? What's a protectorate? It's basically, it's not a colony, but it's a government that exists because you're supporting them. We don't need protectorates. We need allies. And if you try to use our intelligence community to create and build up protectorates, you end up kind of leading a corrupt and rotten empire. That's not what we want. We want America first. Okay, when we come back, we're going to come to a local story here in Tennessee, the Covenant Killer Manifesto. Will the Metro Nashville Police Department release it? They keep saying, they keep putting it off. Now their latest was before the end of the year. But we have new information. Is that what they're going to do? I'm back with Tom Pappert after this.
Hey there, this is Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store. As a proud sponsor of this show, you may have heard Michael Patrick Leahy mention us a few times over the past 4 years. But today, it's me on the radio telling you how pleased we are to be associated with Michael Patrick Leahy and his dedication to the highest levels of professional journalism. Michael Patrick Leahy has been threatened with jail time in bringing the true facts about that Nashville Covenant shooting to his listening audience. Michael Patrick Leahy, you keep doing what you're doing, and we here at the Glock Store will keep sponsoring your show for the good of Nashville and the entire country. And I'm personally inviting all of your listeners to come visit and shoot at the Glock Store. It's where Michael Patrick Leahy learned to shoot a gun for the first time and where he bought his own personal Glock 19. I'm Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store here in Nashville, just minutes from the airports, worth the drive from anywhere, and a proud sponsor of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star Report.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. We are joined on our Zoom Newsmaker line right now by our great reporter, our lead reporter at the Tennessee Star and the Star News Network, Tom Pappert. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Michael.
Well, I'm going to ask a question. We constantly ask these questions of Metro Nashville Police Department, I kind of feel like we are in an episode of Monty Python, right? Because we keep asking basic questions of Metro Nashville Police Department, and they keep giving us answers, kicking the can down the road, which we know aren't factually true, but okay. Now, that's not to say that the spokesperson is a very solid guy, Don Aaron, but he tells us what his bosses tell him to tell us. Do the background, set this whole thing up. What's the Covenant? What were the Covenant killings? What's the manifesto? What's the status of obtaining those documents?
So the Covenant school killings are, of course, they occurred in March 27th, 2023, Audrey Elizabeth Hale, a transgender biological female identified as a man named Aiden, went into this Christian elementary school and killed 6 people. 3 were students, 3 were adults. We found out almost immediately she had what police called at the time a manifesto. This started with 1 journal, then it was 2 journals that were both found in her vehicle. Well, we've since learned through court documents there may be up to a dozen of these journals that she began writing in middle school. The Tennessee Star, our esteemed host here on the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, Michael Patrick Leahy, have been suing both Metro Nashville and the FBI to secure the release of all of these journals. Only one of them so far, and a couple pages from a second, have been released. The only place you can read that is at the TennesseeStar.com.
Yeah, and let's just be clear, that no government entity released it. We obtained that 80-page, 90-page journal of the killer out of like 1,000 pages. It was from January 1st to like March 27th, 2023. We obtained that legally.
Correct. And by the way, they threatened briefly to put you in jail over
Indeed,
it. That's
they
how
did.
upset they were over this. So there is a concerted push. Kash Patel, our hopeful next FBI director, said that this started with the FBI. The FBI told Metro Nashville what to do, and that is how we eventually get to our poor MNPD spokesman, Don Aaron,
before we get to that,
before
we get to that, let's kind of set this up. So, here in our case in Tennessee was based upon the Tennessee Public Records Act, which governs the release of public documents from localities and from states. And that law has an exception that if there is an ongoing police investigation, those documents can't be released. And so this investigation began on March 27th, 2023, when the crimes were committed. And every several months or so, Don Aaron, we ask him a question and he gives us an answer. Give us an update on that process. And I think you've talked to him today. Where are we right now? When is this, quote, investigation going to be completed?
Well, so the most recent response we had was in early mid-December, and it was that I asked very simply, what is the status of the investigation? Will it be complete by the end of this year, December 31st, 2024? Don Aaron replied, yes, that is the goal.
Oh, he
So
said the
this
goal. He
morning-
didn't say, yes, it will be released. He said, that's the goal.
That is the goal. Correct. That is the goal.
See, Don is a very good public information officer because I think he knows he has no idea when it's going to be released, if it's ever going to be released. But he said it is the goal to release it by the end of the year. So do we have an update on this?
Well, this morning I reached out to Don Aaron at 8:03, first thing in the morning, and asked, was it still going to be released by the end of the year? If not, can you give me an update? Is it still in the documentation phase? Has the detective made any progress since November when the goal was to be released by the end of the year? We have yet to receive a response, and to be completely fair, Nashville just announced, I think about an hour ago, 30 minutes ago actually, just announced its largest methamphetamine bust in the city's history. So Don Aaron may be a little bit busy, but I expect we'll hear back by the end of today.
He's very reliable, and by the end of the day, he'll give us an answer. If you're of a certain age, you may remember the Johnny Carson show, where he would pretend to be the foreseer of the future, Karnak the Magnificent. And if I were to do my Karnak the Magnificent impression, I would say we're going to get an answer from Don Aaron that said it's still the goal, but it might be slipping.
I think that your powers, your Nostradamus-like powers of perception may be correct again on this one, Michael. I think that he's going to probably, like you said, say the same thing, but leave a little wiggle room in there.
Wiggle room.
If it bleeds into January or maybe even February, March, that's not a big deal. He's still going to be accurate in his statement.
So there's one word that we can use that may be appropriate here. It's the word moot, M-O-O-T. And the reason I say that is because Kash Patel, who has been nominated to head the FBI, told Glenn Beck back about a year ago that the FBI director should release a number of things immediately, including the full 1,000-page Covenant Killer Manifesto. Our expectation is that Kash Patel will be confirmed and that whoever's acting FBI director on the afternoon of January 20th very shortly will issue instructions to release to us to comply with the Freedom of Information Act request that we put in that started all this litigation. And we sued in federal court and state court in May of 2023. We lost in the trial court in July when the judge made a very poor decision that we can talk about at some other time. But in the federal course, the judge there, Judge Trauger, has been reviewing these documents in chamber since, I think, May? It's a long review. Well, here we are, like 6 months later, and still reviewing them. I think she's probably just going to keep holding on to them. That'd be my guess, putting my Nostradamus hat on again. And just wait for the new FBI director to release these documents to us because we have the Freedom of Information Act request. And then there'll be a lot of stories that you can write based on that. Don't you think, Tom?
Oh, it'll be very exciting. I mean, it's a dark topic, but we learned an extensive amount from the first journal. We learned, for example, that Audrey Hale was just obsessed with transgenderism, wrote about it endlessly. We learned that she was planning her attack, or at least she wrote that she was planning her attack since middle school. And it's very peculiar that these notebooks, this manifesto, has been suppressed now for almost 2 years, while meanwhile we have a letter written by the alleged man who attempted to assassinate Trump that was written to a friend, and the FBI published that, and it was no big deal. It's very bizarre.
An ongoing investigation. Of course, that would have been governed. Well, in the case of the FBI, we're talking about federal law and FOIA, that act. There's no reason for them to withhold it, other than ideological protection of a particular group, that is transgenders. That's basically what they're going to do. I think what we'll find from this is that, this is my personal view, that the whole transgender movement is a massive mental illness problem in the country. And
I think further than that, we're going to find out it's a grift with mental health professionals knowingly sending these people out there, even though they're very, very mentally unwell.
Yeah, I think it's probably. Plus, here in Tennessee, I think there is going to be an issue of potential liability, civil liability, for failure to warn, that we're likely to see medical professionals, including Vanderbilt University Medical Center, to be possibly potentially exposed to claims that they have a civil liability for their failure to warn, when they knew, according to the sources that we have. Tell us a little bit about that, what we've discovered on the failure to warn issue.
Well, so we've learned that Audrey Hale was, I believe, a 22-year mental health patient, starting from the time she was 6-year-old up until her death at the Covenant School. This was through a number of different therapists at a number of different institutions. And one of them that has been publicized is Vanderbilt University Medical Center, but there are others, at least one other institution where she was receiving mental health treatment, a second one where she was receiving help for her eating disorder. Apparently, she was evaluated to be inpatient committed because she was talking about suicide, talking about harming others on at least 2 occasions where she managed to evade a commission or being committed because, well, it might hurt her mental health. So this is the type of poor decision making, in my opinion, that's being made in these mental health institutions. And the result, you could argue, is dead children. I think this could be the moment, or this could be the first domino, at least, that really helps us understand this transgender movement is harmful. It's very profitable to a small number of people, and it's not doing anything to actually address mental health.
And by the way, we've been kind of holding off on some reporting because we know the name of the local institution and some of the medical professionals who are involved in this treatment and may have failed in their duty to warn, in addition to what we've demonstrated about Vanderbilt University Medical. We sort of held off on that. And part of the reason is because we've had an expectation that the entire manifesto will be released in the near term with the Trump victory. And we sort of anticipated that from, I thought, since early June that Trump would be likely to win. And so that's one of the reasons why we've held back. But I think that's all going to be changing. And I think when the documents are released, we're going to have so many stories to write about. And I think a lot of medical institutions and medical professionals are going to have a reckoning, and it's not going to be pretty for them.
It won't be, but it will be very pretty for America. I think this is really a big part of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. That involves getting into these mental health institutions and figuring out what went wrong over the past 15 years. What happened between the Diagnostic Standard of Medicine 4 and 5, where everything went so horribly awry.
Exactly. Well, Tom, we're on pins and needles to hear when Metro Nashville Police Director, Department Communications Officer Don Aaron responds to you. If he responds during the program, just text me and we'll read whatever it is. I don't think you'll get it about 5 o'clock today. I think that's my guess. Tom,
that's my guess. 4:59. I'll get the email.
Tom Pappert, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. Anytime.
All right. We'll have more when we get back. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy.
My fellow Americans, I was this close, very close, to buying from the lumber yards. These are sick people. But I turned my head at the last second, and I saw a big, beautiful ad for D.T. McCall's. These are highly respected people. If I had not turned my head at the last second, I would have been ripped off at some lumber yard for $200 in hidden charges, and D.T. McCall and Sons are never going to do that. They'd never do that to you. These are great people. I've known them for a long time. They have great deals, and I just have to say, nobody knows deals like I do. D.T. McCall & Sons has locations in Lebanon, Carthage, Lafayette, Cookeville, and Franklin, and they have been family-owned in Middle Tennessee for over 100 years. These are tremendous people. D.T. McCall & Sons. Check out one of their stores today.
Impersonator not endorsed by Donald Trump.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. Well, as we speak, oral arguments are being heard in the Supreme Court of the United States in Washington, D.C., in the case of the United States versus Skrmetti. The United States, of course, it's the Biden administration, Department of Justice, as well as the ACLU, that are arguing that the Tennessee law, which prohibits bad medical treatment for minors who have been persuaded by the public, perhaps their parents, that they are transgender, part of the woke mind virus, I think. It prohibits them from having their bodies being permanently altered with either puberty blockers or hormone therapy or genital mutilation via surgery. Now, what's interesting about this case, and we spoke with Attorney General Skrmetti about this on Monday afternoon, and basically we were told that this particular lawsuit is not challenging the prohibition of genital mutilation. It is just focused on the prohibition of puberty blockers and the infusion of hormone therapy. This morning, we got a clip of Attorney General who was in Washington, D.C., I think just outside the Supreme Court. We're going to play this and his thoughts on this particular lawsuit.
Hi, this is Jonathan Skrmetti. I'm here at the Supreme Court. We're about to head upstairs for argument. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been sending prayers and encouragement. I have heard your messages over and over. I appreciate it. My team appreciates it. Now we're going to go upstairs and get it done. Thank you.
Going to go upstairs and get it done. So this is happening as we speak. An amicus brief was filed by the state of Missouri, and their Attorney General Bailey, had a comment on this. Let's hear him right now.
What are some of the arguments that the proponents of these laws protecting children will be making tomorrow?
Well, it's really a states' right issue. You know, I think the 10th Amendment is the overlay to all of this. And the 10th Amendment says that any authority not given to the federal government or denied to the states is enjoyed by the states and the people of the states. And it's plenary power. The federal government is a government of limited and enumerated authority, while the states retain residual authority. The constitutional challenge to Tennessee's bill asks the question, can states protect kids? I mean, at its most fundamental core, that's the question before the court. And the plaintiffs here have raised an equal protection challenge, saying that it is unequal application of the law to single out different groups of people who can be then denied access to specific medical care. And our point is, number one, it's not medical care at all. It's woke left-wing experimentation for which there are zero FDA approvals for irreversible surgeries. There are zero FDA approvals for use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in the treatment of gender dysphoria. And so the state absolutely has a compelling interest in protecting kids from this kind of mutilation.
Yeah. Look, this case to me is a slam dunk, and that I don't think it's going to end up being 9-0 because you've got Ketanji Jackson Brown, who in her hearings, remember what she said? She's the ninth member, the newest member of the Supreme Court. She said, basically, when asked by our own Senator Marsha Blackburn, what is a woman? her response? I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you. Are you kidding me? I think, everybody knows the difference between a man and a woman, and she doesn't. So I don't think you're going to see her. I don't think you're going to see her in this instance siding with the state of Tennessee. But you might see Sotomayor. You might see Kagan. I don't know. But clearly, all of the 6 Republican-appointed justices, I think, are going to side with the state of Tennessee. 6-3, I think. It'll be 6-3, 7-2, probably most likely 6-3. There is this whole business of you're violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment here. That's just nuts. By the way, just as an aside, my personal favorites are the Bill of Rights and the first 10 amendments because actually they're pretty simple and straightforward. The 14th Amendment, have you ever read it? Oh my goodness. It's a huge, huge writing. It's not one sentence, 2 sentences. It's like, 2 pages. And it's always used by the left to find something in that 14th Amendment that they can use to undermine the Bill of Rights or the underlying elements of the Constitution. Look, it's about kids. It's not about equal protection. What they're claiming is, because a young man wants to become a girl, a boy wants to become a girl, you're violating the Equal Protection Clause by disallowing that child from receiving life-altering puberty blockers or hormone therapy. That's just, they'll make the argument, but it's just ridiculous. And what's further ridiculous in this instance is that the Department of Justice is siding with the crazy ACLU. This is all 4 very bad years of the Biden administration. It can't be gone soon enough. We'll have the decision will be released probably in May, I think, of this year. I think it'll be 6-3 in favor of Tennessee. We'll be back with more. Crom Carmichael joins us after the break.